let's lean into that community dynamic, because it really is the opposite maybe of the myth. If the myth says, I can do this alone, what we're saying is we're wounded in community. We have to be healed in community. That's a common saying at Pure Desire: wounded in relationship, healed in relationship. So why is that? Why is community so critical to recovery and healing?
Well, again, Nick, I want to start with the fact that we don't see ourselves very well.
Yeah.
And a part of the healing process is breaking the denial that you have the ability to control, manage your image, because the truth is, God's in his loving kindness will in one form or another expose us, and breaking the denial that I can be in control of my recovery it is important. But I think that again, with the addictive personality, I'm it's almost a constant in the counseling room that if I ask whether it's the husband or the wife that's addicted, if I ask them to tell me the difference between isolation and solitude, they're deer in headlights quite often. And being the avowed reductionist that I am, simplify, simplify, simplify. Isolation is when I seek to escape the painful realities of my life. That's what happens when a sexual addict acts out. They're
Mm-hmm.
trying to escape their life.
Yeah.
Solitude is when I'm alone, but I'm facing my life. I might be doing my seven
Yeah.
pillars work, or I might be trying to fix the faucet in the family bathroom. But I am facing the realities of my life, and I'm working forward in that. The number one sign, I believe, of an addictive personality is that desperate need for isolation, because in isolation they feel like they are safe because there's no one looking over their shoulder.
Yeah.
But the truth is, it's the place where they have the least boundaries. And so it's the most dangerous place
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
them to be.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Really well said.
Yeah. I think, we've talked about it a lot in our workbooks, and I know you talk about it, Harry, in the counseling room, but the idea of replacing experiences and replacing behaviors is so important. And I think that that's what's so healing about being in group and being in community is and I can specifically a number of times in my life where I've been honest with someone about something and I get rejected and I get shamed and I, feel that guilt and that despair in that moment. But then when I got into a Pure Desire group, I remember that first group, like a number of things I would say where it's like, okay, I'm going to risk this here because I know I've said this to people before and gotten super judged for it. And you say it in the moment and you're not judged. You're loved. You're accepted. You're thanked. Thank you for sharing that. That was so, affirmed in that moment too. And my brain is like, oh, people can be safe. People can. And so in my mind, it's that replacement that is so impactful about community, Pure Desire group, having a clinician or a therapist, someone walking with you because they're putting language to your experience and also affirming like what has happened in your life and replacing those wounds that you have in relationship with positive experiences. And the more that we do that, the less fear we carry when we're in relationship.
Both of you are referring to risking. And my favorite definition of vulnerability, I treat as a recipe. I have to be in a place of uncertainty where I don't know the outcome, but I feel internally compelled to risk. I want to save my marriage. I want to get rid of this addiction, whatever that initial move forward is. And when I do, I'm going to face my fears and anxieties. And so this idea of fearless courage is actually mythical. It doesn't exist for you to do something vulnerable. And I actually just blew my punchline. To be courageous requires the same things. You have to be in a place of uncertainty to be courageous. You risk knowing that you don't know the outcome, and you face your fears. And if we believe that courage is a strength and not a weakness, then we need to be able to embrace vulnerability. But there's also another word that I think is an important word for the three of us, the word faith. Faith requires you to risk where you don't know the outcome. That's exactly what Hebrews 11 is all about. Risking. And when we risk, we experience our uncertainties, but it's in that uncertainty that we get to exercise our faith and allow our faith to increase. So if we see faith and courage as strengths, then the suggestion to our listeners today is that vulnerability is not a weakness, but vulnerability is an act of courage. It's an act of faith for you to choose to open up and begin to expose your story. But it begins with you being courageous to recognize that you need help. And you have to acknowledge that to yourself before you can acknowledge that to anybody else.
Yeah, well, and that might begin with being around other courageous people that we're watching do that. That again is community, is I'm in an environment where people are doing the hard things and I'm watching them and learning from them and going, oh, wow, I want that in my life. And what I was thinking about is the number of proverbs, that tell us walk with the wise and you will become wise. To be around people that are doing what you want in your life is the way to see that in your life. But there's also a whole bunch of proverbs about, keeping the company of fools and the danger of that. And I think in a very real sense, most all of us would agree there is a part of me where I am foolish. I make foolish choices. I gravitate to foolish things. There is a self inside of me that I go, what a fool I can be. And if I'm in isolation, if you think about it this way, I'm keeping the company of fools because I'm by myself. I'm avoiding hard things, and I'm listening to this voice of a fool going, yeah, don't do that. That's too hard. And I'm going to likely, just like you were saying, Harry, make poor choices. I'm going to do foolish things because I'm keeping the company of fools versus walking with the wise, becoming like those who are doing the kind of things I want to do. And it's not just that I kind of hang around them like, we sit together at the same church, but I think the implication of walking with the wise is that idea of doing life together, an intimate knowing of we're connected, we're sharing, we're real, and now I'm becoming like that group that I'm interacting with.
Mm-hmm.
Before I had the privilege of meeting you, Nick, you were pastoring a church. And you were sincere in wanting to pastor the church, but you had a problem and you didn't know how to deal with the problem. And originally, just like me, you tried to do it yourself. And mine was a horrible brick wall, but I've never heard about the brick wall for you. What was the final straw that told you you needed to go forward and get help? Maybe you were much wiser than I was, but the people who are afraid of risking, they're sincere. They want help, but they're afraid of the consequences. And there are going to be some consequences that they are going to experience that are out of their control. But what they don't believe is that the loving, caring nature of God, that his grace and mercy is still in operation in their lives, even though you carry such a judgment against yourselves. There's a little tool I developed in counseling that Debbie and I use. And it's a simple phrase. I'm not blank enough. You want to know what's going on limbically in your soul? Take 10 minutes and fill in all the descriptors you have about how you're not enough. I was just working with a young pastor who in 10 minutes came up with 23 items that were there. And his fear is if he told his congregation, if he told his leadership team, he would be booted out the door he would lose fellowship. And I just heard this morning a story from one of my friends about a fellow on the East Coast who got booted out, kicked out of his denomination because he challenged his father's theology, who was the head of that Christian organization. And he loses his father, he loses his pastor, he loses his community. And that is the fear of every single person who is fearing that they're going to be, when they disclose, they'll be rejected.